So sadly, the commissioner was unable to join us, and I ran this joke before Mike, but hopefully it lands. She's the crypto mom, and so we're joined by either the crypto dad or the crypto bro, or brother. Well, we're so glad to have you, and thanks so much for jumping in. I'm Marisa. I'm head of legal at BA, and Mike and I have worked together in the past. He's a very crypto-native lawyer in the space, so we're very glad to have him join the task force as chief counsel. I just want to give you a minute to introduce yourself and your history of being in private practice and how you joined the task force.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I'll give my standard disclaimer that my views are my own and not the views of the commission or any of the commissioners or the chairman. I will also say that, Christian Carlo, my former boss, has the crypto dad moniker, so I think I'll go with the crypto bro. That's okay. So I started off actually working for Christian Carlo during the early days of Bitcoin, really before we really had the whole crypto market. And we really were approaching it from first principles, trying to decide if this was a new type of commodity, something within the Commodity Futures Trading Commission's jurisdiction. At the time, Chris was a commissioner. He went on, of course, to become chairman of the commission and greenlit Bitcoin futures years later. But at the time, we really were just kind of looking at this novel asset class, thinking through how we could regulate it if to the extent it was within our authority. I was super fascinated just by this novel financial infrastructure that blockchains kind of enabled, where you could have peer-to-peer transactions without any sort of intermediary or central party sitting in the middle. And that's really what fascinated me about the whole thing. And so I went into private practice, initially really just working on traditional market issues. But as the crypto industry started to develop really around this principle, right, because these networks that you had, Ethereum, Solana, and so forth, they all really focus on taking out intermediaries, disintermediating markets. And our securities markets, our derivatives markets, they've always been premised on this idea of intermediation and regulating intermediaries and issuers. But a lot of this stuff could be displaced by technology. And that's really what we saw. And so as a lawyer in private practice, I had the opportunity to work with all sorts of entrepreneurs and innovators to think through these issues and try to find solutions. And the regulators and the administrations over time had different views and were more receptive to my clients' requests and business models. But yeah, it's always been fascinating.
Thanks for that helpful background. You mentioned your work with entrepreneurs and developers. I'd love to hear from your perspective how the pain points have shifted from, let's say, 3 to 1 year ago to now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the regulators kind of had their head in the sand initially with a lot of this stuff where they weren't really engaging, and maybe they thought it would go away or it wasn't going to become, what it is today. The prior administration took a very much enforcement-focused approach, really was shoot first, ask questions later, not really looking to engage productively with a lot of the entrepreneurs and innovators in the space. And instead, you'd come in for a meeting with a regulator and walk out with a subpoena, and that really was not inspiring trust with market participants. And so I think we've tried to take a much different approach now with the task force and with our new chairman, Paul Atkins, and Commissioner Peirce, kind of leading this new approach of engaging with industry, taking industry input, and trying to come to a rational and coherent regulatory framework.
And we've seen some guidance already that you guys have published, the staking guidance most recently, which I thought was great. But I'd love to hear about just the top priorities that you're working on now, you meaning the task force is working on now, and the mission, why it was set up.
Yeah, so the task force really grew out of acting chairman Mark Ueda and Commissioner Peirce coming together with their staff and developing a new way forward with the new administration in place. And President Trump, one of his campaign promises was to make America the crypto capital of the world, and part of that mission really requires an SEC that's willing to engage and come up with solutions for industry, work together with industry, create a structure where businesses can reshore that have left the United States, create new pathways for distributions and exchanges to kind of re-enter the United States, new business models, foster innovation. And so the task force is really a vehicle that's cross-divisional. So there are folks like me, I'm in the chairman's office. There are a few others within the task force that are out of the chairman's office, but many of the other folks within the task force are in the different policy divisions within the commission and have been detailed into the task force. And that approach really is conducive to getting things done when we have a new kind of industry asset class that touches all of the different policy divisions. And so I think that, under Commissioner Peirce's leadership and the kind of foresight to build something that is not just like a silo within the agency, but instead to think as to about how we can kind of come up with a way to instill innovation and these values throughout the agency. And that's really been accomplished through this task force. It's not a permanent thing necessarily. It's meant to kind of be a way to jumpstart things within the commission and get this stuff moving. And we, are certainly, as you mentioned, we've had guidance that the divisions have put out, right? So the Division of Corporation Finance has issued a number of staff statements on things like proof of work mining and proof of stake staking, and meme coins and stable coins. Trading and Markets recently issued FAQs related to some broker-dealer custody issues and transfer agent issues. And we're really trying to clear a lot of the brush around this lore. So things that we mentioned in the FAQs, Trading and Markets mentioned in the FAQs, that was stuff that it's not necessarily new, but it's stuff that you would have to have a conversation with staff, and they'd have to be transparent to tell you those things. And the chairman, as indicated in one of his recent statements, has told the staff, be transparent with industry when they come in, tell them if they need no action relief, or if this is something that the laws already address, the regulations already address, or it's something that's dealt with in another letter, and so you don't need to kind of go through a process with the staff. We really don't want it to be this kind of opaque building where you walk in and you're not sure if you're going to get a Wells notice or whether you're going to get the answers you need, which can be really frustrating. And I think when I was in private practice, it was always the most frustrating thing to go in and prepare for a big meeting with the staff, and then they kind of just sit there and listen and ask questions, and then you don't get any result. We actually want to produce results, and that's why we're working at a rapid click to get stuff done.
I think that happened to the Blockchain Association a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, when we met with the SEC. So it's really good to see that the doors are open, and people who come in aren't going to get a subpoena or a Wells notice.
I think we've had over 100 meetings so far, and I've not seen any Wells notices go out. So happy to say that.
I imagine there's a lot of education to do on the staff level, since it was sort of a closed, black box to the industry before, under Chair Gensler. So is part of the task force's role to help other staff get up to speed on how the tech works?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of it, right? So when you have one of these large divisions, there's going to be specialists in all sorts of areas. So if you look at Trading and Markets, there's folks that spend all their day working on broker-dealer issues. There's folks that look just at transfer agent issues. And there might just be one specialist that's got the lore and understanding on one particular granular issue. And there are some folks that have spent a bunch of time on crypto within the different divisions. We work with a number of them who are kind of understand the technology. It would be great to have all the staff really understand this stuff, because I think it's an important thing. We're definitely trying to get staff up to speed throughout each division. But to your point, there are sometimes specialists and folks that are very technical and understand the stuff, and others that really don't, might think a blockchain is some sort of fence or something like that, so.
And BA, that's one of our roles, obviously, is to do some of that education. We had a good meeting last week with members of your IM division and our fund working group, and there was a lot of education and good discussion that happened there. So I could definitely see some more areas of partnership in the future.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Could you talk about just some of the task force or Commissioner Peirce's immediate focus areas to the extent you're able to talk about them, whatever is public?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a recent speech, the chairman's laid out a number of our priorities, and Commissioner Peirce has laid out in several speeches kind of the areas of focus for the task force. I can touch on all of those. I mean, in particular, we're focused on developing pathways for distributions and issuances of crypto assets to come into the United States. We really want to reshore a lot of the businesses that have left the country. I think that there was a recent report that, millions of dollars in airdrops occurred offshore, and Americans missed out on that, and that's not helpful for the crypto capital of the world, as President Trump's put it. So we're looking to create safe harbors, exemptions, and other pathways, and really clarify how registration can work in the context of a crypto distribution, right? Because you have such a unique type of distribution in the case of, for example, an investment contract where the asset itself, the crypto asset that's part of that, is not intended to be a security in and of itself. And so there might need to be some clarity around that, and the staff's looking at that. In other areas in the custody space, the staff recently put out FAQs on custody of non-security crypto assets and clarified that there's nothing. The 15C33, the broker-dealer custody rule, doesn't necessarily apply when you're custodying a non-security. Staff's also looking to kind of clarify the application of the custody rule and the debt capital rule to crypto assets that are securities and also non-securities. So those are some areas of focus that the chairman's mentioned with respect to broker-dealer custody, and then also an investment advisor, fund custody. There's a lack of clarity around some of the qualified custodian rules. I know the Blockchain Association submitted a comment letter to the custody rule, or the safeguarding proposal, a couple of years ago. That's something that Acting Chairman Ueda indicated is no longer going to move forward, but the chairman's indicated interest in coming up with some solution there. And then in the trading space, there's some of the legislation contemplates trading on ATSs. Many in the industry want to engage in pairs trading, where they're trading a crypto asset that's a non-security against any sort of security like Apple stock, Tesla stock, or even crypto asset securities. And there's potentially some lack of clarity around these in-kind trades that the staff's looking to clarify. So those are some of the chairman's priorities. Commissioner Peirce is also advocating for some type of exemption for innovation. So that would look like almost like a sandbox type regime where market participants could come in and engage in different types of tokenization models or other business models that might not be clearly contemplated under the securities laws. And so that's something that she's hoping to get some feedback as to what sort of conditions would apply there and how that might look and what might be workable for industry.
So you're not busy at all, right?
No, we take meetings, but that's about it. We try to keep busy.
And I know Commissioner Peirce issued the 40-plus question RFI a couple months ago, or maybe a few months ago now. How does that process inform the task force's initiatives?
The industry input is so valuable, in particular at the staff level, because, to the point you mentioned earlier, it's like not everyone on the staff is technical and understands how this stuff works. And so we've received so many great submissions from the Blockchain Association and others explaining, how a lot of the technology works, what sort of business models people are exploring, and then also the legal implications. And that saves the staff time, that points them in the right direction as to issues they should be thinking about, gets them up to speed. We really welcome that feedback. It's not something that I think the staff is even used to getting in other areas. So it's been very helpful to them. I think they are very appreciative that people are taking the time to write these long briefs and memos and come in and meet with us. I think, as I mentioned, we've taken over 100 meetings. Our roundtables have been very well attended. We've done, I think this will be our 5th roundtable on Monday. So we're just getting so much input, and this is a process where it's a novel industry, novel technology. The issues touch so many of we've got many statutes that we're looking at, and the issues touch all aspects of all of them. They touch many of our rule sets, and so this is to say it briefly. I mean, it's a complex issue, and to say the least. And so we're very appreciative of the feedback.
So I want to talk a bit about the roundtables. What have been your biggest takeaways so far? And I know that there's one on Monday, and I'd love to hear what you're hoping to take away from that.
Yeah, so the roundtables have focused on tokenization, security status, custody, and trading, and as you mentioned, we have a DeFi roundtable that's coming up on Monday. I mean, some of the takeaways to me have been that things need to be much more clear. We need clear rules of the road for this asset class and for these markets, and there's many issues that we need to think through, and the input's very helpful, of course. I think when it comes to security status, which is one of the probably biggest threshold issues, we have a lot of different views coming from folks, right? And there are a number of legal decisions that we have to think through here. Some of the input that's been really helpful is that folks are almost divided on two sides of the house. There are many that are looking for a very simple solution where you say, if you sell something for capital raising as part of an investment contract, the assets are never securities. They drop right off of that transaction. It can be freely traded without conditions, and that's probably one extreme view on one side. And then on the other side, folks kind of take almost like the Gary Gensler view, where things sold as a security are always a security, and there's no flexibility to pull it out. And there's all sorts of views in between, and so that's helpful for us, I think, in terms of navigating where to land. And Commissioner Peirce recently spoke at the SEC Speaks conference, and I think a lot of her views there were informed by those discussions on security status, because there are the real investor protection is one of our missions. There are real investor protection reasons that you might want to extend some of the protections of the securities laws beyond just one transaction, an initial fundraise transaction. But at some point that needs to break off, and so thinking about how to break that off is important. Another area is preemption. I think you've got this patchwork of state legal regimes. You've got both the money transmitter laws and the virtual currency business laws, and then you also actually have state blue sky laws, state securities laws, state commodity broker laws. So there are all these state laws, and so to the extent that we do certain things at the Securities Exchange Commission, states might take different views, right? And we've seen some litigation occurring at the state level where people are trying to pick up where the prior administration left off. And so we can only solve so much at the SEC. So it is important to coordinate across both the administration and with some of these state agencies. But it's also important to find ways to preempt, whether it's through regulation. There are certain registration exemptions and other authorities that we have to kind of preempt state blue sky laws, but we can't necessarily always preempt some of these other regimes. And that's where, of course, Congress can be helpful. Another area is really exchange trading and broker-dealer trading. I think we've taken away that many of our existing registrants, like broker-dealers and national securities exchanges, as well as clearing agencies and others, want to move into this space, and not necessarily just with respect to security, crypto assets, but non-securities, and they might want to do some of those things on the same platform. And so Chairman Atkins has referred to this as kind of like the super app, where you could have a broker-dealer, an ATS, that offers crypto asset trading and non-security crypto assets together with security crypto assets, staking, which certainly not a security there, and lending and other things, all on one platform. And then that might be able to be done under a single broker-dealer license with an ATS, for example, or just a broker-dealer. So we're getting a lot of like interesting input on things that people want to do, and they don't necessarily want to have a million licenses to do it. So we're looking for ways to be efficient and kind of, again, make America the right place to do business, make things efficient, reduce regulatory burdens, and kind of lessen the overlay of regulation on some of these businesses.
And how is the commission thinking about making sure those things withstand the test of time? I mean, there could be a new administration that takes a completely different approach, hopefully not going backward, but it could happen, of course, in the next few years. And I know that's one of the reasons why legislation is so important, but I'm curious how the commission thinks about that.
Yeah, so of course legislation is going to be the most permanent solution, and that's something that is beyond my authority, but I think it's something we're very supportive of at the commission. But of course, even legislation is not necessarily the solution for everything, right? Because regulators have a lot of authority. There have certainly been administrations that look at certain statutes and legislation and are able to find ways to refuse to implement or kind of take their discretion to interpret things in a way that's not necessarily favorable. So, we take it upon ourselves at the commission to act expeditiously to provide pathways for this stuff to come into the United States within a regulated context under our existing authority. We have broad exemptive authority. We've been putting out clarity on certain matters. We've also been working together with our sister agency, the CFTC, and others within the administration to act quickly to allow this stuff to start coming into the United States and businesses to grow here. And the reason that is important is because once this asset class and industry is really embedded within broker-dealers and exchanges and other areas of our day-to-day lives, it makes it much harder for a new administration to come in and totally wipe it out. So part of this is really a market solution. We're willing and have been working with industry to collaborate on clarifications and coming up with a regulatory solution, but it's also important for industry to engage with us and tell us what they're looking to do, and we can hopefully work together to develop a regime that's accommodating.
And then, assuming legislation does go through, knock on wood, what role will the SEC have going forward?
Yeah, so depending on which bill we get, I think all of them are going to involve the SEC to some extent, whether we're primary or acting in some a secondary capacity or collaborating, remains to be seen, and we're standing ready to be helpful to CFTC and others that they may have authority here. There are going to likely be some mandatory rulemaking. Some of those may be joint, some of them may be just at the SEC level, so we would certainly expect to be engaged in rulemaking. There may be other rulemakings that are not mandatory but are needed to interpret aspects of the legislation. We certainly would, to the extent the legislation involves registrations with the SEC or authorization for some of our participants to take on new capacities in the non-security space, would be working with FINRA and our registrants and others to kind of get that facilitated and get those registrations going. So we expect to be busy, but yeah, we'll have to see what the legislation says.
Lots more comment letters for us to write.
That's right.
I imagine. What kind of collaboration do you think should exist between the SEC and other regulators? I mean, the CFTC is one that comes to mind, but even state regulators.
So I think it's critical. I mean, we all need to be rowing in the same direction. I think with respect to the federal regulators, the SEC is part of the president's working group. The president's issued an executive order related to crypto and pulled together a group that includes the CFTC, the SEC, Treasury, and others within the administration to kind of develop a report that explains kind of how we're going to make America the crypto capital of the world, how we're going to create incentives and the right environment for crypto businesses to thrive and within a regulated context. So that's certainly something we're working together with our colleagues across the administration on. I think at the state level, I mentioned the preemption issue. I mean, it really is a critical area of focus as well, just because you've got a regime in New York, for example, with the BIT license. You've got now California has its own regime. I think Louisiana has a similar regime. And then you have all these state money transmitter laws. And so if we're not coordinated, I think you could end up with a world where you have all of this, everybody needs dozens and dozens of licenses, potentially more than 50 licenses, just to trade all these different products, and that's not probably the best result. It's certainly it wouldn't be a more efficient market to have to get a bunch of licenses and deal with that overhead. So we're looking for ways certainly to coordinate with the state regulators to make things more streamlined and make America a good place to do business.
I know that preemption issue is a big one in the latest market structure draft too. Because we're almost out of time, let's look ahead maybe 3 to 5 years when the US has become the crypto capital of the world. What do you think the ideal regulatory environment looks like?
So to beat a dead horse, I mean, the preemption piece is really important, right? So I think whatever framework we come up with, hopefully there is robust preemption at the federal level, so that if somebody goes out and gets an SEC broker-dealer license or CFTC digital commodity broker, whatever the term is, they're not now subject to 50 state licenses, and then you have all these different insolvency regimes. I mean, I think that's an important consideration as well, because depending on what the asset is, it could be subject to SIPA, it could be subject to the UCC at the state level, it could be subject to the CFTC's insolvency regime. So that's an important area to harmonize that. It's really important that you have optionality as a market participant. That's definitely feedback that we get from some of our registrants, where again, they want to kind of do everything under one roof and have one primary regulator, and they don't necessarily want to be subject to multiple regulators. And so coming up with a solution where there's not such a burdensome framework or overlays, which certainly will require coordination across agencies to come up with something that's not so burdensome for participants. I think that's important. Ideally, whatever solution we come up with is also not solely like a government solution. I think there's a lot of things that we have areas of self-regulation in other industries, and the crypto industry is one where there's so much diversity in the things that people are building and the types of products that they're coming to market with, that putting everything under one government regime may not make sense. There might be areas, for example, with like NFTs and artwork, maybe some light touch kind of frameworks needed, but maybe the market gets there as opposed to the government, or maybe that's something that states figure out. So I think flexibility, optionality is really important. There's probably a role for the states, a role for the federal regulators, and harmonization with foreign regimes is going to be important as well. We certainly want to redomesticate our crypto companies that have left the country. We're interested in working together with our allies to kind of deregulate across the board in foreign countries, and in particular, if foreign countries are kind of interested in American businesses coming in, doing distributions, and kind of operating on a similar regulatory plane, we'd be interested in those sorts of discussions as well. And Commissioner Peirce has alluded to potential sandboxes across jurisdictions. So that's an area I think will be important as well. We're used to having substituted compliance in other regards, and so bringing that to crypto can make things much more efficient.
This was a great conversation. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you.
We're very happy to have you here, and also to just have you as a partner as we hopefully achieve regulatory clarity and make America the crypto capital.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.